So when you're doing the occlusal, you're going to be looking along the arch so that you can see this angle. So see the angle that you used? You lean the burr toward the facial, so your pulpal floor is getting really deep facially. So you're threatening the facial pulp horn. We're trying to protect them, so lean the burr lingually, okay? And then don't forget to go into this pit. There's a big pit right there. So you're going to look this way and then follow the central groove and go right into that pit. Then you're going to look and see, okay, now I make sure I get the pit. But with the burr leaning a little bit lingually, and then you're into these grooves, okay, but look how tall your walls are. They're much taller than the burr. Some of it's because you're cutting into the triangular ridges too much, but when you lean the burr this way, the facial walls get really tall while the pulpal floor is getting deep on the facial side. This is where you should have been in terms of the pulpal floor position, about right here. Okay, so again, you can sort of see in the box too, you're leaning facially quite a bit. So vertical angle. It takes everybody a fairly long period of time before they really get how to look for the vertical angle. Now when you're in the box, of course, you've got this is a composite or amalgam?
It's composite.
Composite, okay. So you have a pretty obtuse angle right here, and that's fine for composite. But you see it cut in more than you needed to here, but on the facial side, it's a pretty rough wall, isn't it?
Yeah.
So never try to go gingerly when you have a wall that's like that, facially or lingually. And this burr will go in much farther, and it's much more stable. Okay. So if you're on the facial side, don't lean the burr lingually. Keep it vertical. Make sure you look this way so you know it's vertical. And then back to the occlusal, find the margin. Always do the occlusal first. Find the margin, find the angle, get the length. And see how you're doing on the occlusal part of that wall. So now we have a different area up here. If you have to fix a wall, the first thing you're going to fix is the occlusal part. You're going to work at the pulpal floor level before you go down gingerly. Okay? Always. Even if you've already gone gingerly, if you have to fix a wall, go back and fix the occlusal part of that wall. Okay, so now we've got the occlusal part fixed. Now you see where the corner of the box should have been, right here. So that's why you got too deep axially. You were disoriented when it came to finding the corner of the box. Now in the lingual, now you're leaning it sort of buccally here, so it would block your view, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So you might have been trying to look this way when you're doing it, or something like that. So something had you leaning away from your eye, which is pretty typical. But this way, you know, just make sure the burr is vertical and then do the prep. So we can repair the occlusal part a little bit here. So find the margin, find the angle. Now I forgot, you did tell me you were doing a composite prep, and I'm starting to prep 90-degree angles for you automatically. So I could extend this margin a little bit farther on the facial side, get a little bit more of an obtuse angle, but we want flat walls. We want nice, clean, flat walls, clean margins at whatever angle you want. And get the length, get the curve, put the corner of the box about right here, and then match the gingival part to the occlusal part, but always make sure the burr is vertical, not leaning facially, not leaning lingually. Okay, and then over here, see if you can find the corner of the box about maybe here. And again, if you use the 55 burr, it'll help you with that. So there's the corner, and then get rid of the excess all the way to that wall, and then you'll find out that, you know, even though your gingival clearance is not very much, it's a reasonable clearance, but that's not the gingival margin.
Okay.
Understand what I mean? You can't measure the clearance when you don't have a gingival margin. This is not the gingival margin because there's all this excess down there that you haven't removed.
Yeah.
Once you flatten out the gingival floor, you find out that you have much more clearance. So again, when you go gingerly, 7 steps at a time, every time you go down a little bit, you flatten the floor all the way to the margin so you know what the clearance is. Then you can decide whether you have to go farther gingerly or not. Okay? So see if you can do with the 55. Practice getting rid of all that excess at the general margin and flattening the floor. But then you're going to discover you're way overextended. But you know that's the way it is. And then you can start on the MO over here on the number 20 or 29. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to position myself so I'm looking along the arch. With the patient reclined a little bit more like this. Okay. Handpiece somewhere around here. Okay. Dry now, huh?
Dry?
Dry, huh?
Yeah, now dry.
Okay. So you got into that groove and this groove. You're cutting into the triangular
That
ridge
was, yeah,
here.
but I then stopped. I stopped.
Yeah, you missed this groove a little bit. You're just slightly off to the side. But you do have the basic angulation lingually, which is good. Some of your walls are a little on the short side. So you could have kept the level of the burr at the same level pulpily everywhere.
I just have to make it wider then.
Yeah, just try to preserve the triangular ridges between every pair of grooves. So you could have come all the way around like this and preserved all that triangular ridge. But you have the burr leaning in the right direction at least, and that's a good start. Then when we're coming into the box area, okay, so you have a margin here, but
too lingually.
yeah, it's way overextended lingually. How'd that happen?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. On here? Okay, so
Now just tell me, but you can see
on the
more detail
lingual
if you're
wall,
looking
when
at
I was putting the burr inside, I slipped off completely over the curvature. So
Okay, oh, the burr went around the corner like this.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So it opened up.
So if you have a little bit too much clearance, if the burr has room to fit through there, then
Yeah,
often it wants to go out.
Mm-hmm.
So put an extra finger behind the handpiece. We always cut from the outside in. Start the margin and cut inward, but this extra finger helps to keep it from slipping outward. So if there's a little bit too much clearance and the burr has room to go out, and you're not totally careful, then you might very well slip and it'll damage the outside surface of the tooth. But an extra finger does give you a little bit more support. It does help. Okay, so given the overextension, it's still a pretty nice flat wall now. Okay, and it wasn't that bad before. Now, this is composite prep, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that looks like it's a little bit obtuse, so that's fine. What about the facial wall?
Facial wall, I did it and then I thought I need more clearance on the gingival floor, so I was trying to go more.
Clearance gingerly?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's beside the point. We're looking at the facial wall right here. I don't really see much in the way of a facial wall. I mean, at the occlusal level, I see a margin and I see an angle, but it stops here and then there's a big, huge curve. So how are you supposed to find the corner of the box if you haven't extended the occlusal outline enough? So what we would do is make sure the burr is vertical. Let's go in any farther.
You want the 55?
No, that's right. So we're going to do the occlusal part. So find the margin, let the burr vertical. Still getting a little moisture sometimes. With the burr vertical, find the margin, but cut in farther. Don't just cut in a little tiny bit. You've got to cut in until you go beyond where the axial wall is going to be. You've got to get your outline formed beyond where the axial wall is going to be. So visualize where the corner of the box is going to be, and make sure you cut in beyond that. Then, once you found your margin and your angle and the length here, then make a smooth curve to join the isthmus. Then you can find the corner of the box, and again with the burr vertical, it's much easier to do.
Yeah, I see that excess now.
And again, the 55 burr makes it pretty straightforward, but now all you have to do is get rid of that excess with the 55 burr and you're looking good. even though we have a 90-degree angle all the way down, so you'd have to move out farther facially, but let's not worry about that for right now. But see, cut in farther and then make the curve to join the isthmus, and then we're in good shape. Okay, get rid of the excess. Gingivally, it's a composite prep, so by the time you make the gingival bevel, you'll be fine. Okay, try to keep the axial wall following the outside curvature of the tooth a little bit better, and that'll work out better too. Okay, so when I see finish that one up, and then then you can go back and continue on this one. Okay, but over here you made a dovetail that's in a place that it doesn't belong. Okay, there's this groove coming down here. The dovetail should be way over here, much closer to the
ridge.
Yeah, you haven't really removed the pit yet.
Okay.
Okay, the distal pit's still there. Yeah, so you made a dovetail, but you're cutting into the triangular ridge with it. It should have been much closer. Remember, halfway, or a third of the distance between the pit and the top of the marginal ridge? That's where you put the wall, then the pit goes up that way. Okay, anyway, finish the molar, and then you can continue on the premolar. All right. Okay, so the extension into the distal groove and distal pit got pretty big.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it won't get big if you're looking in the right direction. If you're looking in this direction, now your angulation lingually is pretty close, but a lot of your walls are pretty short, huh? So this wall right here is about half the burr. Okay. So, but when you cut into the distal groove, this burr is getting pretty dull now, isn't it? So when you cut into the distal groove, just go into the groove and then come back. Go into the groove, come back. Don't wobble all around in there. There's the distal groove, there's the distal buccal groove, the buccal groove, the lingual groove, and then preserve everything in between those grooves. Preserve the triangular ridges. This burr's not cutting anything. It really doesn't want to cut. Do you have a sharper burr? Usually what I say is every prep, use a new burr. It's much safer. Yeah, I have a few more in the other room. We're doing a lot of preps. You need a lot of burrs. Okay, so this one's actually trying to cut. So into the groove, into this groove, preserve the triangular ridges in between, and make sure wherever you are, the wall's about the same height as the burr. And then you'll be okay. Keep the end of the burr at the same level everywhere, and then you're pretty safe. But again, if you're looking the way I am, you can see it's at the same level. If you're looking vertically downward or something like that, which a lot of people try, then you have no idea where it is. Okay, so anyway, close, but keep the size a little bit more under control. So your burr slipped around the corner. That's what I was just talking about with her. So if you want to find the margin and keep it under control, use an extra finger behind the handpiece. So if you've got too much clearance, if there's enough clearance so the burr has room to fit through there, then use an extra finger so you can try to stabilize it so it's probably not going to slip outward, which it really wants to do. Okay. So I didn't go all the way out there. There's still a little bevel out there, but anyway, trying to clean up the margin a little bit. Over here, your exit angle is, what do you think?
It's acute.
Acute, and so that's the opposite of what we want for composite, isn't it?
Yes.
So we're going to have to go out a lot farther facially. So we want to get an obtuse exit angle. Right now it's maybe just a little bit obtuse, but a little bit obtuse is fine. Even for amalgam, a little bit obtuse is fine. A little bit acute is death for everybody. So that's pretty obviously acute, isn't it? Okay, and then make sure that when you're going gingerly, you put the burr, you're too close to the outside surface here, so it's slipped. So don't go that close to the outside surface. Put it where you want the axial wall to be, about right here. And over here, put it about right here. Looking parallel to the contact, I can see where I am axially, and I can control that. Remember, getting rid of the excess, you'll be much more gentle when you're near the adjacent tooth, so you don't have, you're never going to be pushing gingerly hard when your burr is right here. So only push gingerly hard when you're at the axial wall where you want the internal line angles to be. Okay, so use the 50 fiber, get rid of the excess along there. You can smooth out the gingival floor a little bit, smooth out the lingual wall a little bit, and then bevel the gingival margin a little more completely. You know, and you can probably, this damaged area right here, you can include that in your bevel, so that'll be okay too. All right? Okay, so you start on this one. So finish that one and then continue on this one, but you kind of missed that lingual groove a little bit. The lingual groove is about right here, but you shifted it distally. And so, yeah, you'd want to have a dovetail. Typically on this one, you're going to have a dovetail about here. And again, a taller wall. And then a separate extension into the lingual groove, that's exactly where the lingual groove is. So a dovetail over here, lingual extension over here. That's typically what we expect the outline form to look like in that area. Okay, so you're coming along pretty well on the lingual clearance, a little much, but your exit angle is close to 90. Over here you got too much clearance.
Yeah, I slipped.
Yeah, so again it's the same thing. When you're getting close to the adjacent tooth, keep the pulpal floor level where you want it. And then the wall's taller. And you can even use an extra finger here if you wanted to. But then just nip out a little bit at a time. Take your time and then trial and error. Look to see if you've gone out far enough facially. And I have. That's how, I can stop right there. Okay? And the burr doesn't have enough room to actually slip through there now. But with that as the margin, then I can come straight in whatever angle I want. Same thing over here. But this one's amalgam, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're aiming for 90-degree angles, but you're going to have to go ahead and use this margin out here. Even if it's overextended, you know, make sure that it's doing what you need to do, and then make sure you have the burr leaning lingually, pretty close. And your pulpal floor position seems to be pretty good according to the wall height, so we're off to a pretty good start on that one. Okay, but you have to really be careful about
The outline.
the dovetail near the marginal ridge.
Yeah,
Okay.
I need to take a picture of it because I was confused with it.
Yeah. Yeah, look at the anatomy. Crash. Okay. Okay, I'm going to put my chair right here. I'm going to bring your mannequin up a little bit so I can get in a better position for myself here. Okay, so let's take a look. Back to the 330 burr. Okay, so you start on 19. You did 30 earlier. Okay, so when it comes to the occlusal outline, it's all about the anatomy of the tooth. Okay, so on 19, let's take a look. So we want to lean the burr lingually, right? But you have it leaning buccally. You have several different angles here. And you want to extend into the distal pit, which is right here. Right? Okay. So looking the way I am, I can see the angle. I can just follow the central groove right into that pit. There we go. And then the distal buccal groove, the lingual groove and the buccal groove. And then just make a nice smooth connection between them and preserve the triangular ridges. You want to make sure you preserve the triangular ridges between these grooves and always have the burr leaning lingually. Okay, so that's a reasonable occlusal outline, but look how much deeper you are. See that? You're way down here. So this would be where the pulpal floor should be, and this is where you are. You're a millimeter, more than a millimeter deeper pulpally than you need to be. So look along this direction and you can see what you're doing while you're doing it. That's what makes all the difference. Okay? That makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so now on this one here, so your clearance is a little much on both sides. This wall's, you know, it's flatter than this one, okay? It'd be nice to get really flat walls. So we do that by making a flat wall on the occlusal part first, and then we match the gingival part to the occlusal part. So we can do that. Gingivally, you're overextended, and you know your clearance doesn't look like it's super a lot of clearance, but you have all this undermined enamel at the gingival margin. So again, when you go gingivally, when you do the 7 steps, before you've gone gingivally enough, make sure you make a really flat gingival floor all the way to the margin. Then you can evaluate your clearance. Then you can decide if you have to go gingivally again. So this is the way that would look. Now on the lingual side, the burr wants to slip out this way. So put an extra finger behind it.
Okay.
And we're going to, wherever the margin is, we want to cut straight in. And again, make sure the burr is vertical. So wherever the margin is, just start from the margin and cut straight in. You're going to do the occlusal part first. And then look at the angle. So now we've got a flatter wall and an angle. This is composite, isn't it?
It's composite.
Okay, so now we have an angle that's a little bit obtuse. And now we're going to go gingivally right there. There's the corner right about here. Then we get rid of the excess along that wall all the way to the margin. So the gingival part matches the occlusal part. Now let's switch over to the 50 fiber, which is what you would normally use for the box. So again, here's the margin. So we're going to, on the occlusal part, you start the margin, cut straight in, you get the length, you get the angle, you make the curve, you find the corner. Then you get rid of the excess to match the gingival part to the occlusal part. And then you get rid of the excess gingivally. So see on the lingual side, now I'm keeping the burr vertical and I'm getting rid of all that excess at the gingival margin. And now what we're going to see is that you have more gingival clearance than you need. Okay, so once we get the floor flat and get rid of all the excess to the gingival margin, then we actually have a gingival margin. When you have a flat floor all the way to the margin, that's actually the margin. And then you check the clearance from there to the adjacent tooth. So we got about 0.75, something like that. You want 0.5. But, you know, every step when you're going gingivally, make sure you clean off all that excess so that you can evaluate the clearance. And that tells you if you have to go farther or not. Okay, now the facial side wasn't too bad, but just not very flat. You got too much clearance, but again, go back to the level of the pulpal floor, which should be about right here. You can recut inward from the margin straight in, do the occlusal part at the level of the pulpal floor first. Get the angle, get the length, make the curve. Then you can find the corner down that wall. You can't see the wall, but I know where the corner is. And then get rid of that excess, just using the end of the burr like this. And then we should have a nice flat floor all the way down to the gingival floor. Or a nice flat wall down to the gingival floor. There we go. Then you can flatten the gingival floor. So you get rid of all the excess all the way to the gingival margin. Then you have a margin, and then we can look to see how much clearance you have. So you're overextended, and I didn't go any deeper gingivally than you did, but you're overextended. But now we see that you're overextended because I got rid of all that excess at the gingival margin. So that's kind of the key. Okay, so over here on 30, which you did first, so look along the wall this way, and then follow the central groove. But see, you got to this point, and then you didn't know where to go. But there's the distal pit. Here's the distal groove. You just made the shape. You made an extension like you're going into a groove, but you're going into a triangular ridge. Here's the groove, and here's a groove over here. Now this one you started to extend up into the groove, and this one you got pretty close. But again, with the 330 burr, just follow the central groove and go right into the distal groove, right there. That's where it is. And the distal buccal groove is here. Buccal groove, lingual groove, and then preserve everything in between. preserve those triangular ridges between each pair of grooves, you have the burr leaning lingually, which is nice. But this is the killer right here. You cut right into the triangular ridge. And there was absolutely nothing there to cut into. There's no groove there, there's no decay there. And then over here you miss this groove too. But anyway, it's getting better now. So you can go back now, and with the burr vertical, see right now your prep diverges occlusally. When I look this way, I can see the facial lingual walls at the same time. So it's diverging occlusally, and so go back and rework these walls with the burr vertical. Then recut this wall. Do the occlusal part first, and then go gingerly, and then get rid of the excess there, and then recut this wall. Again, as we always, when we change a wall, we change the occlusal part first at the level of the pulpal floor. Just like we did the prep from the beginning, you do the occlusal part first, do the occlusal outline first, and when you're happy with that, then you can go gingerly and figure out where you want the corner of the box. And then you can get rid of the excess along there, but be careful, because over here you're leaning the burr lingually. Not as much as you were before, but you're still tending to lean the burr away from your eye, so double check, make sure you're not doing that. And then you can redo the occlusal outline here at the pulpal floor level, margin, angle, length, curve, and then you can come down that corner. And when the burr is more vertical, it makes it much easier to do it and have it come out right. Okay, so keep the burr vertical, see if you can get rid of all the excess along the facial, lingual, and gingival, and you'll be pretty close. Okay, but remember, every step of every prep, there's something you have to see. Okay? All right. Okay, so when you're working on 29, you're going to be looking this direction for the occlusal. Okay. And so I already see that you haven't really gotten into that distal, into the distal pit. All right? So again, it's all a matter of the direction that you're looking. So I'm going to look this direction so I can see, look at that, see that pit? It's right there in front of you. And so as long as you're looking the way I am, you can see exactly where that pit is. Now that's what you should be seeing right there. That view is why we're looking this way. Now see over here, you leaned the burr facially on this side, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we always keep it leaning lingually on these lower preps. So let's go into that pit. Okay, so we want to make sure we include that pit. Mm-hmm. This is interesting.
Slip.
Yeah, that's quite a slip.
Yeah.
That
it just got stuck there. So.
Oh, okay, so you're really pulling hard to get it back again, and then it went crazy on you, didn't it? Okay. So what we would typically expect on the distal side of this lower premolar is, you know, include the pit and then make a dovetail going facially. And then there's an extension into the lingual groove here. But again, when you're doing the occlusal, you're always looking through the central groove, you're looking along this way. Now, the burr got short all of a sudden, didn't it? See, yeah, there's no burr left. How'd that happen? I hit the table. So I'll replace your burr.
55, right?
Yeah, that'd be good. But we still have to work on the strategy for doing the class 2. And the number one component of that strategy is make sure you do the occlusal outline beautifully, then go gingerly. And when you go gingerly, you don't change the occlusal outline. So over here, you know, you've got too much clearance, but this is way too much clearance. So how'd you get way out here?
I was just trying to smoothen the wall.
Yeah, well, there's a much more discreet way of smoothing the wall. You know, if you're going to smooth the lingual wall, of course, when we smooth the wall, we always start at the margin and cut straight in. And we always cut inward, we never cut outward. We never go back and forth, we just cut one direction. And we do it by trial and error. And then when we're happy with the occlusal part, then we can go gingerly, and first we find the corner, and then we get rid of the excess, between the corner and the outside surface. So we do the occlusal part, margin, angle, length, curve, corner, and then the excess. We just always do that. That's what we always do. It just works every time. So now you see where the corner of the box should have been, and the direction of the axial should have been this direction. So when you get that far overextended, the axial should be perpendicular to the lingual wall. That means the axial is going to start out going this direction here. Totally different direction from what you have. Okay. And then on the facial side, you lean the burr lingually. Now everybody wants to lean the burr away from their eye, so you have to make sure that you don't. Look this way to make sure that you know the burr is vertical in the box. But if you start leaning this way, then it's going to be catastrophic, and that's what happened. Everything got damaged out there on that facial side. But wherever the facial margin is, I mean, maybe you'd have to put it out there because of decay. Who knows? But you're typically not going to want to be undercutting that much. You might decide to do that for a very good reason, but then when we make the axial, we're going to put the corner here, and the axial is going to go this direction. The axial follows the outside surface of the tooth. But when you did the axial, you went back and forth like this. Okay? That never works. You have to find the corner of the box and then cut away from that wall. Find the corner of the box here and cut away from this wall. That's what gives you the shape of the axial. Now, it's much more difficult to do that, much more difficult to get the idea about that if you have so much extension. If your margins are way out this way, then that requires much more curvature on the shape of the axial wall. So what you might be able to get away with by being a little bit careless about the axial wall on a prep that's much smaller facial-lingually, you can't get away with it on a prep like this. You got to get the walls wherever they are. You got to make them flat. You got to make them at whatever angle you want to the surface, and then you can make the corners and then make the axial as perpendicular as you can to each of the facial-lingual walls. And then now the axial is going to be under control. All right? So again, it's really important that you get each step done well, and when you don't get it done well, it gets to be impossible. So, for example, trying to look vertically downward when you're doing a prep or something like that, you just can't do it on this arch. Okay, so we keep working on that. And then you have the homework preps this afternoon where you're going to refine those techniques. Okay. Still getting some water in here, huh? I thought we turned that off.
Sometimes, but it's good, otherwise it's dry.
Hmm?
Maybe like once, but it was dry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you just washed it off or
Oh,
something.
this one I wiped it with the wet tissue.
Well, that would do it.
A lot of water,
Okay, yeah. Okay, so this guy here. All right, so pretty good try. Now, what do you think about the position of the wall at the marginal ridge?
The dovetail, where I put the dovetail?
Well, you don't have a dovetail, but the wall at the marginal ridge, what do you think about its position relative to the marginal ridge? So where do we want the wall, the position? Where do we want this wall?
In the groove.
Well, we want it 1/3 of the distance between the pit and the top of the marginal ridge. You're almost to the top of the marginal ridge. So your wall should have been maybe here, and then a dovetail going facially. That's probably where the distal wall should have been, about right there. So something like this. Again, 1/3 of the distance beyond the pit toward the top of the marginal ridge. And then you're going to have a separate extension into the lingual groove right here. Make sure you have a 1.5 mm wall even in that groove. Okay, but this extension distally is the problem. Now, your clearance facially is fine. Your exit angle, we're doing amalgam or composite?
Amalgam.
Okay, so exit angle is good.
90.
But make the wall farther. Come in farther. Come in farther before you curve to join the isthmus. Over here, you're a little bit acute. And then again, you went in this far and then you stopped. And then you made a sudden curve. So we want to make sure that once you find the margin and the angle, cut in farther. Make sure you go beyond where the axial wall is going to be so that it's easier to find the corner of the box and easier to get the shape of the axial wall. So on the facial side, again, your clearance is pretty good. And we cut in farther. Make sure you get the angle you want, but get the length that you want, and then make the curve. Then you can find the position of the corner. And notice I can't see that wall, right? But I can see where the burr is, actually.
Yeah, I'm also not see. Can't see the
Yeah,
vertical wall.
and you don't get to see that wall.
Yeah.
Nobody does. But what do you need to see? You need to see how close you are to the adjacent tooth, and you need to see how deep you are axially. And you can see both of those things. And as long as you've done the occlusal part well, you can trim off the excess along that wall gingerly without any risk at all. But, do a little bit and check to see how you're doing. But the axial should have been about right here going this direction. And over here about right here going this direction.
The axial pulpal wall, right?
Yeah, so the axial pulpal line angle is one thing, but the axial facial line angle should be right here, and the axial wall should be going in the direction of the burr. But you got too deep facially on the facial side. So looking this way, even though I can't see the wall, I can see the difference between this and this. Here's where you are, this is where I want to be. I can see that difference. Even though I can't see the whole burr, I see enough of the burr to know where it is. That's the tricky thing. Gingival clearance is pretty good. Your gingival floor seems to be rising toward the buccal. So when you're doing the box, keep the burr vertical. When you're doing the isthmus, lean it lingually, and the box, keep it vertical.
Okay.
You want the gingival floor horizontal, and then your clearance is going to be more uniform. Your gingival clearance is going to be more uniform.
But my adjacent tooth is cut.
Okay, well, you got a little damage on it. Yeah, it's going to make it to the ER. Okay, it's not going to. What do they call that? Dead on arrival. It's not going to be dead on arrival. In fact, maybe urgent care. That's how we should quantify damage to the adjacent tooth. There's urgent care, there's ER, there's dead on arrival, and there's don't bother taking them to the ER. Right, just take them directly to the morgue. Okay, well, those look like pretty crazy retentive grooves, huh? Okay, so now I asked you before about figuring out what burr you should use for the retentive grooves. Which burr did you decide on?
Round.
Which one? We got lots of round burrs in there.
Use this.
Use this one over here. Okay, so do you have a number for that one?
Yeah.
What number is that one?
1
Number 1?
Yes.
Okay, is there a smaller one?
Yes.
And
I tried it, but it's.
you tried. So you tried the. You
I
tried
tried
the.
two birds. Yeah.
You tried the quarter round.
Yes.
Okay, that's a quarter round. It's a lot smaller, isn't it? And also, the retentive grooves are only indented. So don't go all the way to the occlusal. Okay, but let's say I wanted to put a retentive groove right here on the lingual of this one. Even though it's a composite prep, we can still just take the burr and do a little bit like that. So there's a retentive groove.
Okay.
Cute,
It
huh?
should not be in the occlusion. Just
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just in the box.
Yeah, just indent. So obviously that would mean not going to the occlusal. Now normally we're going to do the hand instruments first, but if we want to use a burr, that's why I was saying, pick the right one. Okay. So yeah, and so when you're doing a class 2 prep and you're here it is. When you're doing a class 2 prep, you put the axial wall in a location so there's enough dentin on the facial lingual walls to put the groove only in dentin. Okay. For a number 1 round burr, there's not enough dentin on the facial angle walls. The groove will undermine the DEJ. Okay, so this undermined the DEJ in both these areas. So all this is undermined enamel now.
Yeah.
Okay, but nice looking grooves. They're just really big and really too much toward the occlusal. But you know, they're well made. Other than that, okay. All right, and I like your gingival clearance pretty well. Okay, don't forget to angle the gingival floor with a GMT.
Okay.
You got a little more clearance than you need, don't you? So your clearance on the lingual is too much, or your clearance on the facial is way too much. Okay.
Because of the nose
Well, this margin is too far lingually. It should have been, you know, more like in here.
Okay.
Now, when you're doing the occlusal outline, typically we're going to have a little dovetail over this area and then a separate extension into this groove here. But what you didn't need to do is extend in this area over here. Just a little dovetail here, separate extension into the groove, but this extension in that area is not necessary. And then make sure you have the burr leaning lingually the whole time. So yeah, your lingual angulation is pretty good. Okay, but yeah, angle the gingival floor, use that GMT, and then you'll be looking pretty good. In this case, what we'd have to do is we'd have to actually fix, if you do this on a patient, I'd have to come back and overextend the wall to remove the undermined enamel that the retentive groove caused. You don't want to send the patient home with undermined enamel like this. So now it's fixed over here with a minimal amount of additional extension, but it's still, you know, a lot bigger box than you would need to have for a conservative lesion. Okay, but your actual shape looks pretty reasonable, so you're starting to get the hang of it. Cool. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what do you have that's exciting for me now? Okay. Something tells me that this one's a little smaller than you've been doing. That's a good thing. All right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the dovetail and the lingual extension in the lingual groove are things that we would typically be a little more careful about. So you've got a lingual groove right here, so we would extend directly into that groove, because where a groove is, the wall will be short. With the dovetail, it will be over here, coming out facially a little bit. Obviously, you want to use sharp burrs. So do the dovetail in the normal position, a third of the distance between the pit and the top of the marginal ridge. Lean the burr toward the marginal ridge. Make that wall the height of the burr, but I'm having trouble going deeper pulpally. And then again, it's, from the dovetail, it's a separate extension into that lingual groove. Make sure you hit the lingual groove exactly where it is. Okay, and you have the burr leaning lingually. Now we have to continue the same pulpal floor level all the way over to where the box is. So now the occlusal part's looking pretty decent. Okay, so the lingual side, the margin is a little overextended. Your clearance is probably about 0.9. We just want 0.5. So you could have been a little bit less extended, then come in at the right angle, then join the isthmus. But it's pretty flat, and the angle is not too unreasonable. But facially, we haven't really finished that wall yet, right?
Yes, not finished.
So yeah, there's a lot of excess tooth structure there. So all you have to do is take your 55 burr and trim that off like this, and make sure that wall is flat from the occlusal right down to the gingival.
Can you show me again, sir?
Sure.
If we're using the 55 burr.
Yeah. Let's take a 55 burr and do that. Now, of course, the fun part is you can't see what you're doing. You can't see the wall. But what you want to see is where the burr is axially and how close you are to the adjacent to. Now I can feel the excess there. So if the occlusal part of that wall is done pretty well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to work on the occlusal part a little bit first. So at the pulpal floor level, we'll find the margin and find the angle and get a nice clean wall coming in. So once I get the occlusal part of that done, now I'm going to use your corner and then just trim away that little excess down at the genital part of that wall. So there's the corner, and then use the end of the burr and just come down like this and trim off that excess all the way down to the genital floor. But I can see where I am axially, and I can see how close I am to the adjacent tooth, and I can feel the facial wall since I already made the top of the facial wall the way I wanted it. And that's where the axial should have been about right there. So you're a little bit, undefined when it came to the axial wall. Okay. So again, when you're going gingially, look this way so you know where you are axially. So I would have put two corners about here and here and then cut away from both of those sides. And that would have given me the basic shape and position of the axial wall. Now you could go ahead and get rid of the excess to the gingival now. And then you'll still have a reasonable clearance and you can finish it up at that point. But again, getting the occlusal outline done well first, and then going gingerly by using the occlusal outline to help you is what makes the difference. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right.